My name is Paul. Today we're going to talk about painting. So, first let's start with primer coats. Many of you might have seen my wonderful artwork here on YouTube and wondered about the colors that I have on my canvases, before I start painting. Oftentimes I use pink or green or a dark umber or even a blue to prime my canvas before I paint. So what's that all about? Well, basically it's about a few things. If you'd like to gesso your canvas and build up a nice foundation so that the painting will last for a long time, you want to paint with the method of adding a lot of layers. Layers. I like to use gesso when I have it. I also like to get a strong pigment layer down after the gesso coat, and that holds true whether if I buy a brand new canvas from the store and it's pre-gessoed, then I'm just ready to prime the color I want, or if I stretch my own canvas, I usually gesso it and then I put the color that I want on top of it. So how do you do that? One way is to use acrylic paint. You can use acrylic paint to put down a nice layer of color, whatever it happens to be. I do that once in a while. More often I put down a layer of oil paint. When I want to do like a really moody painting or a landscape at night, if there's a lot of the environment interacting with the landscape, I like to use varnish, fast drying varnish, to put down my first coat of color. The varnish that I use is called Damar Varnish. It dries really fast and it's great because you can kind of pencil in your painting, so to speak, with color, and it will dry in about 10-15 minutes and you don't have to worry about it interfering with the rest of your painting. So most of the time I use Damar Varnish and I do a pre-coat. You can get it in a spray or in a bottle at any art store. This is good if you're in the field, plein air painting, and you want to spray down your first color coat and have it dry quickly. You can use this Damar Varnish, or you can buy a big bottle of it and brush it on. You want to make sure to take care of your brushes right away after you use the Damar Varnish because they'll dry and get ruined. The other part about varnishes that I want to talk about is, well, there are a few different kinds of varnish, right? You got your retouch varnish, which is something that you can use to go into a painting later on if you want to do some work on a painting and it's already dry. If you want to spray your painting to kind of give it a little more luster, whether that's gloss or matte, whatever you prefer, then you can use Damar Varnish. And that stuff can go on at any time. You can spray it on at any point in the painting and it's not going to hurt your painting. The thing about Damar Varnish, and this is key, is you can only use it at the very beginning to do your primer coat like I do, or at the very end to do a final varnish coat. I'm not that big into final varnishes. You know, it's just not my style. I'm more of like the Picasso, Gauguin school of like just throw the oil on the canvas and let it dry. So, you know, I'm not that big on using Damar Varnish at the end of the painting, but if you do want to use it and get a nice varnished, classy looking painting, you have to wait 6 months for the paint to dry, and that is your painting to dry, and then you can put the Damar Varnish on it. Because if you don't wait the 6 months, what will happen is the underpainting will crack. That's a whole nother concept that we need to talk about. As long as I'm talking about retouch varnish and Damar and Damar Varnish, I need to tell you about how to apply all of the mediums involved. The general mediums involved are linseed oil, turpentine or turpenoid, depending on what you might use, and the varnishes. So how you apply them has a lot to do with the health of your painting over the long term. You want to make sure that you get the fast drying stuff on there first and the slow drying stuff on there last. You want to work thin to fat. As long as everything underneath the surface layers of the painting are dry, by the time the stuff on top has a chance to dry, then everything will be kosher with your painting. But if something on top dries before a layer beneath it dries, what will happen is this will dry and it will contract the paint within the painting and crack the surface of your paint. You can see this in a lot of museums and stuff where there are old paintings, or even it might have happened to you where you mixed some oil and acrylic paint together, or you mixed a bunch of oil products together and you found that your painting was cracking. That's because you have to pay very careful attention to the mediums that you're using and the manner in which and order in which that you apply them. So that's a little bit about the varnishes. Let me talk about medium itself. The classic medium to use when you're painting is a third turpenoid, turpentine. I like to use odorless turpenoid, which has an agent inside of it that prevents it from evaporating, so you're not inhaling nearly as much. So a third turpenoid, a third Damar Varnish, and a third linseed oil. Put those three together and you have a classic medium. You can buy it yourself, which is what this is right here. Classic oil painting medium. Or you can mix it yourself. Or you can use a number of other mediums. It doesn't even matter. But you can use things like Liquin. It's a quick, cheap, well, it's not that cheap, but it's a quick way to, it's a nice medium, I guess I'm trying to say. Liquin is a nice medium. Just comes in a bottle, and you know, it dries the oil paint as you use it. So for some of you it might be handy because it's a little bit more like acrylic paint. So if you want to make the transition from acrylic painting to oil painting, Liquin is a really good way to start. Other than that, sure, you can get away with just using linseed oil and turpentine. You can get away with using nothing at all. And I have in various paintings done all of the above. I think actually the part of painting that involves the palette and the mediums is highly and intrinsically related to the painting itself. And how it all comes about has a lot to do with how you see your painting happening as you paint it. So in one painting you might want to employ all of these techniques to kind of create a certain effect for your painting. But in other paintings you might just want to throw down colors as fast as you can, so that you can stay within the spirit of the painting. Mediums are up for grabs in my world, just like colors are and everything else. You know, I'll use whatever I feel like. I'm totally spontaneous about it, and I don't ever let it hang me up. Paintbrushes is a very interesting subject because they're expensive and you want to take care of them. I'm just going to give my point of view, like what works for me, and you guys can, you know, do what you want with that information. What I've found over the years is that it's good to have a good quality brush. For most of us, that, you know, that's hard to do because brushes are so expensive. But you want to have a good quality brush, and you want to have lots of brushes. And you want to have pretty much every size of brush that you feel you need for creating your painting. I mean, it's pretty straightforward, right? The only things I can recommend are the filbert brush in general is a great way to do a great many things in landscape painting and portrait painting and figure painting. Square tipped brushes are probably my second favorite. I'm not a big fan of you know, using brush effects or anything like that, funny looking brushes. I like to go for the old-fashioned filbert, you know, size 2, 4, 6, 8, 12, you know, go all the way up to this sucker is a 12 right here. I buy brushes whenever I have the money. I keep these brushes for a hell of a long time, as long as I can. I talked a little bit about how I take care of them in my last video, and that has changed over the years. But what I do now is I keep a certain selection of brushes that I feel like I need to use for what I might be doing. I just wipe them down with cloth or paper towel. If I use a lot of drying agent, I will make sure to dip them in the turpentine or turpenoid to get that drying agent out of there. After I've wiped them down, I store them in the freezer, as I do for my palette as well. Then, you know, they hold a lot of pigment inside of them, but that adds to the character and the richness of other paintings that I do. It keeps me on my toes as far as tonalizing the painting and making sure that it's not too muddy and lifting it up with pigment when I need to lift it up with pigment. So at some point I get a lot of brushes kind of in the freezer, and it's been a month or so, and I wash them out properly with soap and water. First turpenoid, then soap and water, ivory soap, and wipe them down with towels, make sure that they're all clean. And that's how I clean my brushes. Start again, throw them in the freezer, do it like that. I used to clean them after every day's session of painting, you know, but this is a little trick that saves a lot of time.